of the state's Civic Education, Civics Engagement, and Media Literacy Task Force. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. And we will start with remarks by the chairs, and I will turn it over to my co-chair, Mr. Armstrong.
Well, thanks for coming today, folks. And just want to say that a goal that we want to, at least from my end, and I know from Kevin's end too, we want to think about is what we could do for civics in schools and with students. But at the same time, are there other ways? Are there ways to get perhaps, could we do more for civic efficacy for adults? For clubs, you know, for out of school clubs, boys clubs. So are there ways that we could somehow, trust me, my life is working with schools, so that's my wheelhouse, but I'm just wondering if there's ways that we could reach other audiences as well.
Thank you, Steve. And I would echo those same remarks that, and for myself as a high school civics teacher, my first thought is always with civic education, but understanding that the charge of the task force is more than just the education, it's also the engagement and media literacy. So I don't want to lose sight of some of those other elements of the task force, but certainly they all lend themselves to each other. So as we go forward, we value all the perspectives on all three of those major components of the task force. So moving on, prior to the meeting, we had sent out some questions that we wanted to kind of gauge the membership of the task force on how we are preparing people in the state of Connecticut for civic participation. So there were three specific questions. One, the area of civic education engagement or media literacy that is lacking in the state. Two, a specific idea for how to address a weakness in the state's civic preparedness. And three, something that is being done in the state that's being done well in the state and should be enhanced or promoted. So happy to kind of turn this over to the members of the committee to kind of share their perspective on one or more of those questions. And we'll just say that for the flow of the meeting, if we can try to keep our remarks, you know, to 5-minute range. If something really is compelling and we get a discussion going, that's okay. But just want to try to make sure that we can be effective with the amount of time that we have. So with that being said, Chair Armstrong, I don't know if you have anything that you would want to add to that, or if you have any points that you'd like.
Again, we're looking, you know, I mean, we want to get, you know, what's wrong, what could be improved. But again, if the program or the idea that you might have on how to address that problem as well. You know, if we can identify, here's the weakness. Well, we'd love to hear if you have an idea, to repeat myself, of a specific program or a specific approach you would suggest to meet that.
Thank you. And I would suggest that since this is only our second meeting of the task force, that as you go to speak, if you just wouldn't mind reintroducing yourself and maybe what organization you are coming from. So thank you. And with that said, we turn it over to the membership. Does anybody have any questions or points they'd like to make? You can simply, raise your hand if you'd like, and we'll recognize you. Go ahead.
Are you calling on me? No. Sorry.
Oh, obviously. Is that better? Yeah. At any rate, I'm very impressed with our new social studies standards for U.S. history and civics and government. And my comments are really based on what I have read of those. Actually, obviously, I've read it all. And as I say, I'm very impressed with what exists, but I would offer some ideas of what I think is now lacking, how we might address some weaknesses, and how we could enhance and promote what we do well, as you said. And my ideas fall into two categories. One, focusing more on those current events and issues that surely in the future will be considered critical parts of our history. We don't look at them as history right now, but I'm sure that all of you can think of certain issues that we're dealing with these days that certainly will be part of our history for decades to come. And I'd like to see us focusing a little more on those in the social standards. And number two, regarding Dimension 4 of the inquiry arc, I would highlight two methods of informed action that Dimension 4 calls for, and like to see these focused on more as we discuss informed action. And they are, first of all, promoting amendments to the Constitution, which we don't really read much in the news these days, I guess, because people think that it's with the difficulty that we have accomplishing our issues on a day-to-day basis. I think we're just overwhelmed with the thought that working on, and when I say we, I guess our elected officials, working on amendments when it's difficult enough to get just some sort of action and bipartisan action started. At any rate, I would like to see the amendments to the Constitution addressed where we talk about effective action under Dimension 4. And the other area of informed action that I would like to see us address, and this falls more into the civics engagement area, and that would be performing national service as very effective action. And when I say national service, I'm talking in its broadest sense for service to the local community, state, or the country. And I have some ideas more specifically that we can go into later that would best ensure that the learning in school results in permanent comprehension, fostering civic engagement, as we've been discussing, and fostering participation and activism. As I say, I have a lot of details related to the standards that we can discuss as, if you're interested in pursuing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hollander. And my apologies to the folks online. I have to remember to also pay attention there as well. So again, if you just wouldn't mind reintroducing yourself to the committee and what organization or group that you're representing.
Okay, I'm sorry. It's Ted Hollander, and I have an NGO which the label is Step Forward America, and my NGO frankly consists of myself, my writings, my followings on Facebook, and my followings with my newsletter, and I promote actively when possible a combination of a heavy focus on civics education and related courses in good citizenship, if you will, in middle and high school, followed by a term of service in national service, either public service, civilian public service, or military service. And I've written books on the occasion on those items.
Thank you very much. We're going to go online now to Mr. Feinstein.
Thank you, Kevin. I sent out an email earlier today, which I would hope that folks could read on my views on this issue, which is that it's a far more comprehensive issue than just having courses in school on civics. That the purpose of education fundamentally is to develop citizens, and that means teaching people the skills to be effective as citizens, and that needs to be incorporated not just in individual curricular material, but throughout the entire curriculum. The other piece that I just, so I'm not going to read what I wrote before. I assume that folks will read that. But the other piece that we really need to focus on is the absolutely new area of media literacy. There is very little out there on that right now. the ability of a student to be able to discern what is truth and what is false on the internet, to be able to get news from places like TikTok, is just a critical issue. I mean, the polling numbers on where young people get their news are just frightening, and that's an area that it's critical that we intervene in, and it's up to us to come up with some new areas. I don't know that anybody has has uh, uh, found a good answer for that yet, or even proposed a major curriculum. Um, I'm Andy Feinstein. I'm an attorney in Mystic, and I'm involved particularly with special ed law and the special education equity for kids in Connecticut. Um, and so that's who I am, and that's that's what I wanted to say at this point.
Thank you, Andy. And I concur. As a high school civics teacher by day, we are seeing this. You're absolutely right that our students struggle to be able to make sense of what they are reading online, and how critical that is to being civically engaged, understanding that you have credible information to use, and knowing how to decipher that. So that is an important piece of this committee or this task force that I hope we don't lose sight. And it carries the name Civics First, but media literacy is in the title as well. And we need to make sure that we are putting some emphasis on that as we go forward. So thank you. Looks like we have another online, Allison Chandler.
Hi, I'm Allison Chandler. I'm here on behalf of the judicial branch. I actually also wanted to talk about media literacy and resources that are already available. It's a bit old at this point, it's 6 years old, but there is an online course free available on YouTube called Crash Course. I know a lot of schools use it, it's excellent. And there's an entire course called Media Literacy, and it's already available.
And absolutely, Crash Course. I think probably every social studies teacher out there has heard of the Crash Course videos or maybe used them at some point in time. So thank you for bringing those up. Sally Whipple.
I'm Sally Whipple. I'm the director of the Connecticut's Old State House, and I work for the Connecticut Democracy Center. And on the lines of media literacy, we attended the Civic Learning Week National Forum in DC this year, and there were really good examples of studies that have been done fairly recently, one in 2019 by the Stanford Graduate Education folks. And what they found was that with a course that was offered also for free and online, they found that students were able to sort of reverse media illiteracy with 6 50-minute courses, so that the students went in unable to really judge what was true and what was a good website, and they came out of that course much improved with those skills. So the point that the researcher Sam Weinberg was making was that kids are online all day long and sometimes all night long. They've constantly got a phone in their hands, but it doesn't take a lot to teach them how to understand what a good resource is. And I think that is wonderful information. It's not as hopeless as it seems. And one would hope that if we can do that with students, we can do it with adults too. So I like to think in terms of how things that we're doing for students can translate to things for adults. And at the risk of sounding like I'm just promoting what we do at work, we do have 2 programs that are really project-based. One is Connecticut History Day, which teaches students how to research and analyze resources and present what they've learned. And it's important because it addresses one very important civics component, which is student voice. They get to pick their own topic and how they want to express their knowledge. And Connecticut's Kid Governor is another statewide program that we run. And that program at the 5th grade level, the Connecticut History Day is 6 through 12, but at the 5th grade level, students choose issues they care about, research them, present them, and then run to become kid governor of Connecticut. So they learn about government and they learn about how to find their voice and express their voice. And the point I want to make about those programs is that they are both project-based. And when we have project-based learning, the kids are doing some of that work at home. And that is also involving their parents. So from the Kid Governor program, we have had parents tell us they voted for the first time because their student participated in Connecticut's Kid Governor. One parent ran for office and won statewide office. And in History Day, we find parents who always thought they never liked history, now liking it. So it's just a reminder to all of us to think about how what we're doing with students can reach adults in so many ways, and how it's so important to connect with everybody along the way, because everybody needs good civics.
Very excellent points. And as someone who has experienced those programs like Connecticut History Day as both a teacher and a parent, it's doing great work. And we probably don't think of how much it might be impacting the families, not just the students who are involved in that, but that their families are seeing this and kind of living it with them and perhaps learning some from it too. So that's an excellent point that hopefully we can expand upon. Other thoughts, comments, or questions about the topics of discussion today?
Could I just ask Sally, could I ask you a question? There was some discussion that we were having at some point about, and just if people aren't aware of it, there's civic seals that states give out. You know a little more about that. Could you just, would you mind talking about that for a sec?
I probably don't know much more because it's rather new to me, but we sit on the Civics Now advocacy group, which is part of iCivics, and they set goals for civic education across the country, goals that they think would be valuable for states to reach. And one of them is Civic Seals. And it is a way to recognize students for going above and beyond what they need to do to learn about civics in school. And at the end of whatever the state decides they need to do to get a civic seal, they get a seal on their diploma, and it's a mark of high honor. And it is in just a few states now, but I know that a lot of people in the Civics Now group are advocating for it in their states. And it's a nice way to get students, educators, parents together to think about civics and how a civic seal like this might benefit the kids, the students. So I think it would be a good thing to explore and think about doing for Connecticut, because it really raises the importance of civics. And when you have a number of programs like the Red, White, and Blue Schools, if you added civic seals to that, you would really be raising the profile of civics a little bit more and making that seal something that students would like to attain, and really learning about government and civic behaviors in the process.
I think both California and New York have the civic seals for students, and maybe a couple of other states already. It's an excellent idea. Yeah. When you were talking about parental involvement, I have here in the notes, when we got to discussing something of that nature, I often think back to my youth, when at school we had something called weekly readers. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember them, but we called them weekly readers. And they were handouts that went home. And I would like to see something like that to get the parents involved. The student brings the weekly reader home. It could be perhaps based on the particular questions from the social studies standards that the students were discussing on that day or that week or whatnot. And it would be, if they had it, it'd be something that would prompt them to discuss those issues with their friends, and then when they get home with their family, with their siblings and parents and whatnot. And that would be a good way to get the parents involved. And I agree that that's very important, because right now the only captive audience we have to promote civics and media literacy and civic engagement and other related courses. The only captive audience we have is the students, but we could make the parents part of that captive audience.
Folks may or may not know that the State Department of Ed presently offers a seal of biliteracy. That's been going on for 3 years now. And I think
Excuse me, what's that called?
a seal of biliteracy. And I'm thinking if the group thought this would be an appealing, the red, white, and blue schools, by the way, which is mentioned, we're going to be enhancing that program over the next couple of years greatly. And that is awarded now to schools who do, and we had a record number of schools apply for that this year, where a civics seal is traditionally given to an individual student. So that's a way we could recognize, if indeed this ever came to fruition, we could recognize both school and students for doing good work in civics.
There any other comments or thoughts on any of the discussion points for today? Yes, Ainsley Diamond.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ainsley Diamond. I'm from the Connecticut State College and Universities. Just a couple of points. I really appreciated at the beginning of this meeting, you calling out the different questions that were posed to the committee, but more importantly, to say that if you are pointing out a challenge in our state, what resources, what things that have you thought about? Since our last meeting, I just did a couple of cursory searches to see that if I was someone that was interested in civic engagement, what is there? What is readily available? Obviously, because I'm coming from CSCU, I go to my tried and true sites like Edutopia. But what I came upon was icivics.org. I am sure this is nothing new for you. But the piece about that website that I was drawn to was the diversification of the tools on the website. And so I was thinking about how do we make a tool like this readily available to families that would be interested. It's wonderful to navigate this site because it is broken down through K6. And then there's another section for, I believe, 9 through 12. So they have it age appropriate. And so the activities, the lesson plans, it's a very, very comprehensive website. And that's what got me thinking about if we are talking about resources to maybe target different audiences, what are the models that are out there that would be helpful? What are the users? And to go along with that, this is a representative committee, which is fantastic. I also would love to pose those 3 questions to more of our constituents to say, what is working in your sphere, whether that is a high school educator, whether that is a younger educator, whether that is at the collegiate level, whether that is throughout our communities. So I think that there is an opportunity here for rich data and further discussion.
I would agree very much so that those are some good questions to ask. And I think too, you brought up resources such as iCivics, and the idea of, again, back to Sally's point before about how sometimes the education that our children are receiving turns into civic engagement for the adults that are around them, how we can get more of those resources into the hands of the families and not just the students who are using it in school, I think is a great question that we should be looking into. So thank you for that. Other questions or thoughts? Looks like we'll go with Allison Villanueva online.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I'm sorry that I'm off camera. My name is Allison Villanueva, and I am the Parent Superintendent in Watertown Public Schools, but also representing superintendents. Just going there, the questions posed. Schools, it often goes in partnership, very stakeholder beyond just students, but to the families and also to the community members who don't necessarily have children in our schools. We often have many organizations and partnerships like YMCAs or social service departments, parks and recreation that we would consider as extended arms to each of our schools and school districts. If there were opportunities, whether it were grants or joint resources where we could offer families and extended community members an opportunity to engage in local civic experiences or just becoming active to become advocates for important causes to them. I think it also goes beyond just kind of finding a small sample of the type of people that come out for civic engagement. As our demographics are changing across this state of Connecticut widely, we have multiple languages, hundreds of dialects from every which way around the world. Whether things are translated or not, I think it's an opportunity to just put organizations together and offer joint collaborative opportunities to offer things like this. In terms of the seal of biliteracy, or perhaps the possibility of a seal for social studies / civic engagement / media literacy, I think that is a wonderful idea. I've seen the seal of biliteracy be an absolute carrot for students and families who are looking for that next level to elevate something they're striving for. And I think we have a lot of people who would be very, very interested in trying to earn a seal of civic engagement or something of that sort. In addition, and I'll just plug this, I think specifically to the school credit system, if there's an opportunity to go back and look at the adjustment of credit earnings. I know that when credits went down in the area of social studies specifically, there was a dip in the, I guess, number of courses or the types of courses that students took. There's always a pro and a con. The silver lining is that students were offered more choice and they were able to go above and beyond and broaden their horizons of different types of courses. But I do know that we took a dip in many school districts in social studies departments. So that might be an opportunity to look at that again. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that perspective. And the seal of biliteracy is something that is growing. We're seeing it used in more school districts. And from a teacher perspective, although I don't teach foreign languages, I have seen students engage in that and be excited about the prospect of being able to earn that on their diploma. So I think absolutely that there would be a good reason to do that for the social studies and for civics as well, because I think it would be a great carrot for students to chase after. Other comments?
Getting back to the media literacy issue, if I'm not mistaken, the state will require in the near future a course or a credit or maybe a half credit or something like that in financial literacy, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct.
Does the state have any, I haven't seen, does the state have any plans for something similar for media literacy? Because the reason I mention it, we talk about it, and I have always thought a specific course in media literacy, as opposed to being part of the civics and government education, for example, would be appropriate. In my writings, in my books, I have a series of what I call lessons in living. Basically, they are lessons that foster good citizenship, and civics is one, obviously. Civic media literacy is another, and there are 14 other courses that I thought should be included in our curriculum in the future, hopefully not too distant future. But one of the courses, as I say, is media literacy, and I did a certain amount of research on it, and I've written it in my books, and I'd be glad to copy something like that and send it to the pages from my book that address media literacy. I'd be glad to get it into your hands or anybody's hands who wants it. So.
Well, thank you for that. To my knowledge, there is no, and Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, from SCE's perspective, there's no media literacy requirement. And the only place that I've seen it come up would be in some social studies curriculums, perhaps some English department curriculums as well. But I know that numerous school librarian media specialists would probably be championing that cause to get a course requirement. So it's something potentially that the legislature might be interested in taking up in future years, as like to your point about the financial literacy course, which will now be required. Offering a media literacy course would probably do us well likewise. So thank you.
If after, you know, after our meetings and whatnot, we conclude and the group thinks that's a good idea, is that the type of thing that we would put in our final report? I mean, I assume based on the fact that there's been so much discussion today, we're going to continue to discuss and everybody thinks it's important. And that, of course, would be a departure from what we do now, but it might be, might result in doing something better that we already do pretty well, but.
Ted, I'm 100% behind media literacy, but just reminder of everybody on a practical level that whenever the state or somebody adds a course like that, what are the kids studying right now that they're not going to study?
I
Because
understand.
that's always the issue. I mean, that I can't tell you how well-meaning that would be, but that would mean something is that kids are studying right now would have to be eliminated. That's an obvious point, but just a point to consider.
I follow you. The conclusion of the notes that I made for this meeting say increase the credits or courses in U.S. history and civics required for a high school degree, decreasing if and as necessary credits or courses in STEM and the arts. And what I say is, without a solid education promoting good citizenship, the arts and STEM lose some of their significance. So I understand that that it would require a degree somewhere.
All right, so we've got several hands up. I just want to try to give people an idea of what order we're going to go on. We have Jonathan Weiner, followed by Andy Feinstein, followed by Sally Whipple, and then Allison Chandler.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jonathan Weiner. I'm an attorney in Hartford, and I represent the Connecticut Bar Association on this task force. I am the co-chair of the Bar Association Civics Education Committee. One topic that has come up today and has also come up in our committee's work has been the need for a shift in the focus of civics and education and government education from the K-12 setting towards adults. We found that relative to the programs available for public and secondary students, accessible adult education about civics and how government works is really lacking. A lot of it's out there. We find it's subject to disinformation or misinformation on social media, which of course then goes into media literacy, as there's an inherently political lens to a lot of it. In terms of solution to that, our view is that this might be a point for the Connecticut State colleges and universities in particular to address, maybe as a graduation requirement for one of the degrees, along with the general education or phys ed requirements for the Connecticut State schools, because whatever the students are getting in the public schools disappears. And then, I think there is a need for repetition that will help with the retention of that basic information. And it is heartening to hear that parents are now getting it through their, as they're helping their kids with their homework for programs like National History Day and Kid Governor, and that they're being reintroduced to it. To that point, to the homework assignment that was given to us, something that's being done very well. We find that the numerous experiential learning programs like debate, We the People through the Old State House, mock trial, which is organized by the Bar Association, History Day, Judicial Branch Civics Academy, and Kid Governor, they are all uniformly excellent. Perhaps they could use some greater promotion to reach more students and teachers. One thing we do see in this area is that it seems to be an example of the rich getting richer. Not necessarily the economically rich, but those who have educational leadership or teachers who are really into this, they seek out these programs. But it seems to be the same faces over and over again. We'd like to find a way to promote those programs to more schools and to more teachers. I think that would give us a greater base across the state as well. But thank you.
I would concur with your point about the rich getting richer. Again, not economically necessarily, although in some cases in districts that don't have the resources to be able to provide these things, but we do often see it, it's several schools that get heavy into it because they have a teacher who is interested in the subject and knows about these resources to bring. And so how can we promote that more and engage more school districts in being able to participate in some of these extracurricular experiential programs? Because to any student that has participated in them, they've been beneficial. So the more hands we can get that into, the better off we're going to be across the state.
And I think a big part is also building the pipeline within the schools, because so often we see, especially with mock trial, that we have really wonderful programs being built within specific schools, and then teacher happens to retire or leave, and it doesn't get picked up again. And so I think finding a way to build continuity for these programs within the schools would help as well.
Thank you for that. Andy Feinstein.
I'm all for, civic seals and all that, and promoting programs out there. But I think what we fundamentally have is a real threat to democracy right now. And rather than just engaging those who have interest in this, we really need to do something to engage those who have no interest in civics, in government, in democracy. And I do not want to lose the focus on that by doing what's easy, which is to promote programs to those who are really interested in those programs. I think we've got to do something from the bottom up to encourage students throughout the state and at all levels to understand how to work together, how to be collaborative, how to compromise, how to reach solutions together. I think we make a mistake if we just focus on those sorts of programs that engage those who are already engaged.
Excellent point. You're absolutely right. I mean, again, with the rich getting richer, there are families, students, people who are already participating in different programs, and that's great. But how do we find a way to reach students, families that aren't participating? And that's, I think, the critical question here. That's the challenge that we have in front of us is more so to point out that this is a problem, or that's a failure or a flaw in our current practices in the state of Connecticut that we need to be addressing. So again, a point well taken, and perhaps in the process of our deliberations here as a task force, we will find some ways that we could suggest to the state could increase that. So thank you for that. Sally.
Thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit about media literacy again, just that I always struggle with the idea of offering a course on media literacy, because often by the time you get to that course, it's too late. You need that infused through the curriculum for your whole time in school, so that you are constantly understanding what the good sources are and what the not so good sources are. And as things change, and now we're dealing with the whole issue of AI being thrown into media and information literacy, things change so quickly that I think it's important for students to start as early as possible. And I would think that in order to do that, we've really got to help teachers. And I think that really working more closely with teachers is key to bringing in students who aren't yet engaged in some of these programs. Something that we try to do is really reach out to teachers. In our programs, we try to act as coaches so that teachers can text with a question if they're having an issue trying to get a point across or whatever. I think teachers really need that support, because they have to do so much in the schools that those of us who are running the program should always be there to support them. And I think that professional development is very important for helping teachers gain these skills. And I also think that there are probably a lot more people who are civically engaged, or students learning about civics in different clubs than we know. And I think I have always said this about history. People always think they don't like history until they realize that they do. And they might come through that because they see a movie that really inspires them to learn more, or they learn about genealogy or something. But if you can just get that interest sparked, people will realize that they are interested and they will become engaged. And so I think it's important just to be a coach to teachers, to provide them with information, not just resources, because they get so many resources thrown at them, really. But if you can provide real coaching from students who are teachers who are learning how to teach all the way through their careers, I think that could be really beneficial.
Thank you. Allison Chandler online.
I wanted to talk a little more about media literacy, and I agree with Steve. If you add a course, then something else gets bumped out. I think Rep Brown had said we do media literacy in English. We cover it with primary documents in social studies. It definitely should be a part of science with all the misinformation about science we have. It's been a while since I've been in school, but I assume students still have computer science classes. It should be in there as well, because that's the interface for young people, how they're getting their news. It's while they're on their phone, it's while they're sitting on their laptop. So that's another place to kind of engage with them. And that's probably a place where they are engaged, maybe more so than in science or in English class.
Thank you. Again, to the point prior that was made about building these, whether it be media literacy or civic education, a one-off course to graduate from high school is nice, but it's not going to do enough, right? It needs to be incorporated throughout the K-12 system so that you build incrementally, that by the time a student reaches high school age, they have a foundational set of skills that they fall back on and they use, and then they transition out into the working world and they are practicing members of civil society. So again, I think that if we are going to really remediate the problem, it's going to have to be full scale across K-12. It can't just be a one-time thing. So we have to think about how is it currently being incorporated at the younger grade levels, and what more could we potentially do to incorporate more of it. We have Allison Villanueva online, and then hopefully some other folks in the room maybe who haven't. Okay, we can see some there. So we'll go to Allison, and then we'll go to folks in the room.
Hi there. Thank you again. I agree with a lot of the sentiments that are being shared here. And I think talking about the K-12 line, 100%, it is not just a one-off course. It has to be embedded. But in terms of the kind of problem of going beyond students, you're absolutely right. We have students and community members who are not children or students that come to our state of Connecticut, whether they may be a refugee and they may be going to a settlement for the first time, or they're coming to the country not learning the language, that don't necessarily interact with schools right away. And so that's where I just want to harp again on the partnership with other organizations like settlement offices or housing offices or social service offices, or even citizenship offices that are getting citizens ready to receive citizenship for the first time. These are wonderful opportunities to partner with them. And I do think a lot of educators who are in the K-12 and even higher education system would be very interested in partnering with organizations like this to take on opportunities outside of school hours days to put on other courses that might be beyond just that K-12 or even higher education realm to try to reach a wider audience. So if there were opportunities for this group to think about possible outlets, possible courses for extended community, possible grants that could come together collaboratively, I think that's a really powerful opportunity and experience that will touch more than just the K-12 world. Schools are a wonderful vehicle to get the message out, because like you said, captive audience, we have however many hundreds of thousands of students or tens of thousands of students in the state of Connecticut that, by mandate have to go to school, and we can give a flyer or give some sort of promotional material to let them know that there are other types of organizations and courses out there to certainly spread the word. Thank you.
Thank you. And so now we'll go back in the room. We'll start with Jason Mancini.
Hi, Jason Mancini, Executive Director of Connecticut Humanities and Vice Chair of the state's 250th Commission. I want to start with the first, just a comment on what's being done well and needs to be enhanced or promoted, and give a shout out to Sally and her team at the Democracy Center with Kid Governor and History Day, excellent programs, and some of the other things that she and others in the room are involved with, including red, white, and blue schools. But I think there's more to that through organizations that exist in Connecticut, including Everyday Democracy, which is a Hartford-based organization with their civic ambassadors and a focus on truth, reckoning, and repair. I also have had extraordinary experiences with Democracy and Dialogues Initiative out of UConn. Sally and Steve have both been integrally involved in programs for students, but also the broader public. And these are dialogic models that really bring the public together to talk across difference, bringing people together of all ages and all backgrounds. And if we're going to support and encourage this kind of work, this is a real model. To what's lacking, I think it's both a combination of funding, fabric, and focus. Funding, I don't think I need to say much more about, but it is absolutely critical to any of this work. Fabric is really thinking about all of the different initiatives that we're talking about here that work to enhance and promote civics education across our communities. The initiatives that I spoke about, iCivics and others that people may not be aware of. I think we need to figure out how do we work these together, integrate them in a meaningful way for the different members of our communities across the state. And then focus, what are we going to focus on and who's going to be doing that? I think that's going to be really important. There's so much going on. And I think if we're scattering our energies and remain unfocused, then we're working against our common interest. I do want to just call quick attention to a gap that exists right now. Connecticut Humanities over the years has funded the Connecticut Civic Health Index in 2011, 2016. Because of the pandemic, we didn't do one in 2021. But I think to one of the earlier comments, this is a real opportunity to think about where we might not ordinarily think about civic activity taking place in our churches, in our town halls, in our volunteer community engaged meetings and other opportunities to participate publicly. It would be great to revisit a civic health index as soon as possible, but also to remind ourselves where this work is being done actively and maybe less visibly. And then finally, I would be remiss, given my deep background in working with tribal communities, not to call attention to an opportunity to think about tribal civics. In our state, we have 5 tribes. 2 of them are federally recognized and 3 of them are state recognized. They are part of our communities. They are sovereign nations, and I think we need to make sure that they're part of our conversation with respect to civic education. Thank you.
And thank you, Jason, for bringing up that point, because I think it probably would have been something that most people wouldn't think to consider, but it very much so is relevant here. So thank you for that. Next in the room, Kenneth Lesser.
Thank you, Kevin. Ken Lesser, Mayor of Wethersfield. First of all, I am learning so much. I've scribbled about 3 or 4 pages of notes. This is incredibly educational for me, and I appreciate the sharing. So along those lines, I've got 3 kind of ideas. The first is, I think we need a menu of resources, not only for our schools. I think the schools have a lot of that already, but for the communities, if we could produce what I call menu. And you spoke about some of these things in the research you've done, which I think would be helpful. Second, I think we need a point person. So ideally, I'd love to see an office of civic engagement and media literacy create it. It's hard to create a whole agency like that, but if we could get a point person who this was her job or his job, I think that could be very valuable, because what's lacking is not the number of activities and things. It's the coordination, it's the collaboration, it's the education. As I'm listening, some of the stuff I knew and a lot of it I didn't, there's so much already happening. We need someone to coordinate and collaborate and educate folks. And then third, I do want to borrow on Ted's idea, and maybe it's national service that's in our communities and in our state, and that we recommend a statewide program. It's hard to put in a national program from Connecticut, although I love where you're going, and there are some national programs, but maybe this committee advocates a community-based statewide service program where for students that students sign up. So I don't want to lose that, but I really think we need a coordinator. Someone, a lot of the stuff is already happening. It's how do we get those resources and how do we get someone out to coordinate it? But just learning about all the tremendous things that are happening, I'd say 50 to 75% of them I didn't know, and I'm fairly well informed about what's going on. So lots of good stuff going on. We have to get it to more people. Thank you.
Absolutely. As a teacher of civics, anytime I've interacted with any of these organizations or that are doing these great things, I think that very thought to myself of, wow, this is fantastic. Like, how do we do this more? How do we get this out to more people? Because there are good things being done in our state that are civically engaging and would be great to have that exposed to more people. So how do we do that? And so perhaps that is having a state civic coordinator. I'm not sure, but somebody to kind of tie it all together to disseminate that information, that there are these great civic minded programs that are being run throughout the state that would be quite useful if more people had exposure to them. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. Are there any more questions, comments in the room? Angie Parkinson.
Hi, apologies for being late. I'm a teacher and, kids. So I missed the first meeting because I was taking my Young Democrats on a field trip to New York to visit the United Nations. So sorry about that one. And I came in here late, so I'm very discombobulated and trying to get my bearings. But who I am before I make some comments, I serve on the East Hartford Town Council. I'm the House Speaker's appointment to this group. I'm also a high school social studies teacher. I teach 6 different classes, everything but civics comes up in every single class I teach, whether it's Asian studies, Middle East studies, psychology, anthropology, sociology, like all the things. It comes up all the time. And as I mentioned, I co-advise my school's Young Democrats Club, where we bring kids to the Capitol. They volunteer for campaigns. They host guest speakers all the way up to the governor. And they even hosted a debate for our 33rd district state Senate candidates. There were 600 people who showed up, and the winner won by 80 votes. So we're taking credit for Norm Needleman, just saying. So just some comments on some of the things you all said. Ken, I agree that we need some kind of officials who it's their job to do civic engagement. Now, who's going to pay them and how much, I have no idea. But on our council in East Hartford, our town council, we have a community engagement subcommittee. But we definitely feel like we're reinventing the wheel, and anyone else out there probably does too. So some way to collaborate across towns would be excellent. Sally said we don't need a course in media literacy. It needs to be infused every year. As a social studies teacher, I could not agree more. Every time the state requires more courses, my electives are being chopped off at the knees. No one has time to take anthropology because they have to take another health class or the finance class. Like, that hasn't even hit yet. And I'm just thinking, there goes XYZ class. And anyway, if you do something once, people forget, or the kid who comes in as a senior and it was a freshman class and they missed it. So I think it could be something like we put out even a lesson or 2 that's like prescribed for each grade level. And so that you're only mandating a day or 2 or a week. Any more than that, and teachers are going to push back because we're married to our content. I don't want to, skip Gandhi because I have to teach X, Y, and Z. That's not cool. So yeah, I like the idea of having something short, but then giving them, not making the teacher also search for the resources and plan the lesson and everything else, because everybody has varying degrees of background and training, but handing them a 1 lesson or a 2 lesson thing that they do that's age appropriate, K through 12, like start them at the beginning. So I agree with that. And also, I had an idea. Oh, about giving the teachers resources. I think Jonathan said something about that. We have a lot of good programs. Teachers seek it out, but some of them we need to promote. We need to promote things to all the teachers. So my idea is to have a day, and I don't know where or who's running it. I guess one of us, or who's paying for it, but maybe on a PD day, just to get tons of civics teachers, at least one from each school, pull them all together for a big day of collaboration and excitement and things like that. I mean, you can't get every single one because it's too expensive to hire subs, but getting everybody, as many as you can, into one, it's super exciting to get people, like-minded people together where they can collaborate and share and come up with ideas and things. So wanted to say that. And also my school has a civic action portfolio, which is pretty cool. I had a kid interview me as one of her options, but they go to town meetings. They write a letter to either an elected official or to the editor. They can watch court proceedings. They can attend town meetings, or they can interview an expert. And there are some other things too. I don't teach that class, so I don't remember all the details, but I had a kid each semester interview me about my role as a town councilor, and we both got a lot out of it. It was super cool. So, hi, I'm Angie.
Thank you, Angie. And all of a sudden, I took my chair hat off and put my high school social studies teacher hat on, and was thinking, wow, that civic action portfolio, I got to incorporate that. You know, I've done many of those individual pieces, but to put it into a portfolio program that give kids choice and option over what to do is a fantastic idea. You know, I would say this too, it's been brought up by several people. The idea of incorporating all of these things need to be incorporated across the K through 12 continuum. It can't just be one-off one year. And civics, I believe, is the easiest subject that you can do across the continuum, because the social studies themselves are practically applied subject. All the other subjects practically applied, I should say. It's real life. And so all the other subjects that students are learning through their K through 12 experience, it's all practically applied in real life as a civic practice. So there should not be a reason why we can't find a way to incorporate more of it in there. And I think it just needs to be more intentional. You know, my answering of the questions that we put out to you prior to the meeting, when I looked at those questions, my thought was, how do we make it more intentional and make sure that our students in our systems across the state understand what civics is, why they're learning it? Because one of the biggest challenges I've faced as a classroom teacher is trying to make learning relevant. And one of the issues that we end up having, behavioral issues and classroom management, is because our students don't find what they're learning in school to be relevant. But civics, of all things, right, these real life, practically applied subject, is something that you can make relevant as long as we're intentional about it. And we are pointing out and making sure that our students are aware of why this matters and where they're going to see it used, and then have them report back where they are seeing it used, whether it's when they're out with their parents, if they go to vote, which so often is like one of the first experiences or exposures to democracy that our young people have, is that, well, I went with my folks to vote. And I hear about it sometimes from my students, you know, like, I went to vote and that's how I knew that there was an election. So making sure that we're being intentional in our teaching of civics across the grade levels so that our students understand why they're learning this and how it's going to be applied in their lives. And so making it more intentional, again, I can't say that enough. As we are reaching the hour mark of the meeting, I just want to give an opportunity for anybody to have any other remarks that they might about any of the discussion that we've had today.
If no one knew any of this, just by listening today, we have some fantastic programs in Connecticut that exist. Nobody's going to doubt that. What's discouraging me a bit as a State Department of Ed employee is that we have districts that have never, we have kids and teachers and districts who have never participated in one of these events. And I'm guessing vast numbers of teachers and students who don't even know they exist. So I think another thing that besides the programs, I think, and I don't know if this is beyond our abilities, but I think getting the word out, quote unquote, on these programs so that every district at least knows that they happen is another crucial task.
Steve, how's engagement generally at organizations like the Council for the Social Studies? What percentage of teachers actively participate?
How many of the Connecticut teachers, what percent are in Connecticut Council? 45 to 50%
Okay.
are active members. I mean, others go on the website, and things, but dues paying members about 45.
Do they have to pay their own, do they have to pay for the dues out of their own money, or does the district take care of that for them?
More and more would have to pay for it out of their own pocket.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions before we wrap up the meeting? Angie.
I have a question about NCSS. I'm one of the 55% who is not. I didn't know it was a thing that you needed to be a member of. I just thought it was something you checked to see what the standards were. So what do they do? Is there fun to be had? That helps people want to join. I'm just saying. I'm interested.
What does Connecticut Council for the Social Studies do? Does an annual conference. In the last year, have done 50 to 60 webinars on various topics, has an active website. ctsocialstudies.org if you want to check it out.
And as a social studies teacher who has been, I'm not sure if I have a current active membership, but I know I have in the past, it does offer quite a few great programs that we can put to use in our classrooms. Jason.
Just to add briefly, Connecticut Humanities has been a funder of the Connecticut Council for the Social Studies and bringing together museum educators and classroom educators to connect some of the dots between our cultural organizations and our classroom teachers. We hope to continue doing that in the future.
Thank you. Allison Chandler online.
I just wanted to follow up on what Steve said about participation. We have found that personal connection is the most important thing to get districts to participate. We have sent messages to all elementary school principals about our programs. We have free resources. It doesn't require any preparation by your teachers. Please take advantage. And then it's crickets. And then we have a member who has a connection. They call up the principal and everyone's very excited to participate. So I think the networks of folks that we have working on these initiatives have to be willing to bring in their personal contacts. You know, call your high school friend who's a principal somewhere, talk to your nephew's teacher. All of those things help to promote, I think, as much, if not more, than the blast emails we send out.
Thank you. Ted Hollander.
Yeah, I've been very interested in what everybody's had to say. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I would very much like to have a list of the members of this group here with the contact information and the organizations that they belong to. I just can't remember everybody's name, and it would be very, very helpful for me.
Noted. We'll try to make sure to get that information out. In the meantime, I do know that on the CGA website, the Education Committee's page, there is a link to the committee with the committee membership. I'm not sure if it has contact info, but it does have the committee membership and the organizations that have appointed.
Oh, okay. That's really what I would want. Where is that?
It is on the Connecticut General Assembly's website.
Oh, okay.
The Education Committee's page specifically, and at the bottom of the page, there is a link for the different task forces that operate under the Education Committee, this being one of them. And
Oh,
it has
okay.
a
I
link.
didn't realize that was available. Good. Yeah, that's all I wanted. Yeah.
Any last thoughts, comments, or questions before we wrap up?
I hope this was for I can't, I will speak for Kevin, because I think on this one, I will be. Don't worry, if it's controversial, I won't. But, I think this has been very valuable for us. And I think the best course of action would be, with your permission, is we're going to take a look at all that was said today and create perhaps 2 or 3 initiatives that we can initially work on and get that information out to you fine folks within the next couple of weeks. Is that fair?
100% fair.
So we're going to take in everything that was said today and create sort of an initial agenda for what we can actually produce. What we can, rather than just talk about it, what we can actually produce by our January date.
Thank you, Steve. And I do agree. So no issues
Thank
there. So as we're wrapping up today, the next agenda item would be just to announce the date and time of next meeting. There's not a set date. However, looking at keeping pace with the once per month meeting, that would put us at the end of June. So we will send out, in addition to our notes on the initiatives that were discussed today, we will send out a date and time, likely in the last week or so of June, and we'll go forward from there. And so if there are no other questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and adjourn the meeting of the Civics Education Engagement Media Literacy Task Force. Thank you all for being here.
Thanks for coming, folks. Appreciate it.